invite Ivy Bronwyn up to the stage. Ivy's going to be our moderator, the filmmaker. Ivy is an avid believer in the power of film to bring a story to life, immersing herself in the art form. She's played leading roles in several independent films, including Run, Hide, Die, and Sisterhood of Death. Her short screenplay entitled Reflection earned its place as an official selection of the 2019 New Media Film Festival. With a drive to learn and create, she studied film production in Australia, where she gained experience as a screenwriter, director, and first AD. She has earned various production credits in film and commercial projects, from PA to production coordinator to agency producer. She recently moved to New Mexico, welcome, and is excited to moderate for AFMX and join the Albuquerque film community.
Thank you, Karen. Hello, everyone. As she said, I am Ivy Bronwyn, and I will be the moderator today. And I am happy to welcome Julia Golonka. Am I saying? Okay, awesome. Julia Golonka. She was the director, producer, cinematographer of the film Don't Put Her Down. Thank you. She's an editor and a cinematographer. She's worked on feature documentaries such as Anatomy of Wings, Not Who I Am, and her work has been featured in Rolling Stone, Relics, and Bluegrass Today. You can find out more about her at juliagolonka.com. Okay. Julia, it's great to see you again.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about, Don't Put Her Down. Hazel's music, were you an avid, listener of the music growing up, or how did you come to, enjoy her tunes?
Yeah, I started listening to Hazel about 6 years ago. I listened to a lot of bluegrass, but I was listening to different covers of Long Black Veil, and Hazel and Alice's came on, and I didn't realize that I'd never heard women singing that song, and that got me to find the Smithsonian Folkways Pioneering Women of Bluegrass album. And then I started talking to musician friends in Baltimore, and I found out that Hazel lived there for a while and that her family was there, and meeting them kind of got me started on wanting to make this film.
Wow, when you like something new, really dig deep.
Yes.
So what was, you've talked a little bit about the inspiration here, but what was the driving force for creating this film?
Around that time that I was getting this idea, she was going to be inducted to the Bluegrass Hall of Fame, and there was just kind of like a lot of buzz and excitement about her. So someone had made a film about her 20 years ago, and it just seemed like a good time to kind of see how her music is still relevant and is still performed and played by people today.
When did you start making the film?
I started in 2017, but I didn't really focus on it a lot until about 2018, 2019 is when I got the funding that I needed to really make the film that I wanted.
Wonderful. What was your goal for this film, and what audience were you speaking to?
My goal is just to share Hazel's music and to have people just think about what perspective are songs written from. This kind of also got me interested in paying attention to that in other genres too. Just learning that bluegrass songs were written from a very specific point of view before Hazel started writing songs was this thing that I wanted to share.
Is that the kind of thing that drives you to do documentaries?
Yeah. I think getting really excited about something and realizing that other people might care. Yeah.
There was so much information. I'm sure you dug up a ton of information on Hazel that you were not able to include in this film. I did a small search on on the internet, and I found that she was a sibling of like 8 of 11, the 8th of 11 children, and I know you said her father had a huge impact on her music and her goals with her music. Do you know like if her siblings did at all, or?
A few of her siblings played music in the footage where she's sitting in the living room. Those are some of her siblings are playing with her, but none of them really focused on music as much as she did.
And so, awesome. And so how did you, to distill all of this information, how did you choose what to put in? What was the priority,
So the footage of Hazel and the audio that you hear from her is from an oral history interview that the Bluegrass Hall of Fame had. So I kind of used that as my starting point to make a structure. Yeah.
Awesome. And what about Alice?
Yeah, so Alice is at the same time that I was making this, someone was making a film about Alice, so we just decided to stay out of each other's way.
Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, Alice is mentioned and she appears in the DC footage, but yeah, they performed together for a long time and then eventually started putting out solo albums, but there's no drama or anything going on there.
Well, that's good. So happy relationship.
Yes.
So her anthem, "Don't Put Her Down," you helped put her there. What does that mean to you? What's the significance?
That's kind of like a lot of people reference that song. A lot of women who play bluegrass reference that song as like the song that really changed or made them feel like they're welcome in the genre. And then there's a lot of similarities between Hazel's story and with talking to these women who are playing bluegrass, similar to being a woman in film, and just a lot of feelings that I can relate to in that sense.
So you can relate to, so would that be more like like you said, in the film industry, like being a female? I think that song is just relevant to anyone who's kind of trying to exist in a structure that was made by other people, for other people. So do you find inspiration yourself from those songs?
I think so.
Okay, and the making of the film, let's talk a little bit about that and the production. So was there like one moment that stands out as like challenging, or what was the most challenging aspect of making this film?
The most challenging part was licensing her music. It took like 3 years to get it all finalized.
Wow.
And that finally happened earlier this year in like January. So
Congratulations.
yes, that was definitely the hardest part.
And so what about a favorite moment?
Being able to go to her hometown for the bridge ceremony, it was very special. That was something that kind of came together last minute, like a week before it was happening. They were like, oh, we're going to make it a ceremony. So it was very special, and I went down there with her nephew, so and he took me around to different like restaurants that she liked and like friends' houses that she liked to play music with. So it was just a special time.
That's amazing. So you really got to get to know the family and friends.
Yes, and when they did that ceremony, I guess the family got a few copies that are like the real size of the highway sign, and then they gave me one. So I have a Hazel Dickens Memorial Bridge sign at home.
That's awesome. Where do you have it?
It's hanging in the laundry room.
Well, I'm sure you see it a lot. And as a filmmaker, so very creative. Well, two sides of the brain documentary, right? You have the analytical and that creative side. But do you have this like driving force, to create? If you don't create, do you get, some artists say it's like they have to create or else, they go insane type of thing.
I think I'm happiest when I'm working on something, and getting to see a lot of other films that people make and getting inspired by them just makes me excited for the next thing.
And you're an editor, which is like really creative. The story comes together, right, in the editing room. Was it difficult to let go of this project? Because I noticed that you, in the credits, right, you weren't the editor for it.
So I had
how?
an assistant editor, and then
Okay.
I had a consulting editor, and the consulting
okay.
editor was pretty removed from the project, so she kind of gave the feedback for things that I might have been too close to or overlooked.
Oh, wonderful. So you got to edit it, and then you had the assistant be like, hey, that doesn't make sense. And you're like, oh, well,
Yeah,
that's because I
yeah.
know the entire story. Thank you. And do you have any advice for any filmmakers out there that are starting out?
I think to just reach out to people who you're interested in working with or wanting to interview. There are a lot of people who I was able to get in touch with who were excited about this film that I wouldn't have thought would be, but they were very open to just getting an email.
And so do you just reach out to one person and then it just trickles?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
like a
some
floodgate?
of that worked out that way. Yeah.
Hey, does anybody in the audience have any questions for Julie? Yes.
So, as a documentary, why was it so difficult to get the music?
Because it is, since Hazel passed away, all of her music is owned by smaller labels that were then bought by Concord Music, which is a major publisher. So working it out through them was pretty challenging, but I ended up finding a person who specializes in music licensing in bluegrass specifically, and she knew how to handle that.
Anyone else? Yes.
I must confess wasn't a fan of bluegrass, but watching this documentary was actually pretty impressive. I wanted to ask, in terms of the creative element, what inspired you to use that tapestry because that was kind of woven in through the film, and like towards the end, I don't know if that was a kind of a metaphor with there was sort of like this moon or sun, and there was a sort of like a silhouette of the bird kind of escaping. It was like a metaphor of just kind of breaking out of that mold. I just wanted to kind of get your sense of what was sort of your creative inspiration to that.
Yeah. So that whole thing, so it's a cranky, so it's like a scrolled panorama in a box. So what you're seeing, it was filmed almost like a stage play kind of, where the longer part in the middle is all one take. So there's some puppeteers, there's a lighting team, and we had all the lighting programmed, all of the the little pieces that you see moving across were all lined up, and they're on sticks, and they're held up so behind the light to create that, and then someone's turning the paper as it's going, and I wanted to use that because Baltimore has a pretty big cranky scene, and Hazel lived in Baltimore for a long time, so it just seemed like a appropriate thing to do. And then for the part that you mentioned specifically, yeah, and the moon behind her is it's the tracing of a record, which is just a detail that no one else will ever know. But yeah, that was just to symbolize, this breaking away and her finding a way to share her story that kind of lives on beyond her.
Well done.
Thank you.
Ah, yes.
Oh, no, just saying we have 5 minutes.
Oh.
But I do have a question actually. Did Bill Monroe support her from the very beginning, and throughout the rest of her career?
Yeah, from what I've heard, they had a good relationship, since they met, and she got to play with him a few times, and there's quite a few pictures of them together, which I thought was cool.
Oh, and I have another question. So going into this documentary, did you find anything surprising, or did anything change your mind about the direction of the film, or?
At first I was focusing more on her life versus her songwriting, but finding that interview and hearing her say that the thing she most wants to be remembered for is her songwriting kind of changed my focus.
Nice. Anything else? I think we've got all the questions. Okay. Awesome. Is there anything else that you would like to share about the film?
No, just thank
No?
you for watching.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Julia. It was great talking to you. All right. If nobody else has any questions, then you're free to, yes?
I do have a question. What is
Oh.
your next project?
Yes.
So I started it pretty recently, but it's a documentary about the memory palace memorization technique. So this idea that we have an easier time remembering things when they're tied to locations. So branching out from music.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just processing what you said right now. Maybe that technique will help me remember. So if anybody wanted to like reach out to you, do you do films, like if on your website it says you would love to tell people's story, do you have people that come and, you know, say, hey, I want to tell this story, will you help me?
Yes, luckily that happens, and I hope it keeps happening.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so I won't lie to you, and I'll let you guys go. But if you want to get a hold of Julia, your website, right?
Yep.
JuliaGolonka.com. That's GOLONKA. Yay. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. And then, Karen?
Yes,
do you know-
thank you all for being here, and thank you again for coming out here for the Q&A. So I want to mention, of course, you know, spread the word about these films, and again, you can watch them online through November the 18th. Stay tuned for our next series of documentaries that will start at noon. So thanks again, and have a great day. Enjoy the experience.